Surah number 37, verse 102, it says, "And when he reached the age of exertion, he said, 'O my son, indeed I have seen in a dream that I must sacrifice you. So see what you think.' He said, 'O my father, do as you are commanded. You will find me, if Allah wills, of the steadfast.'" Now when Ibrahim a.s. left his wife and his son in the desert of Makkah, he returned back to Palestine, where he continued spreading the message of Allah. He would come occasionally to Makkah, and on one such occasion, when his son was approximately 10 to 12 years old, Ibrahim a.s. had a dream where he was sacrificing his child. Naturally, he was confused and uncertain because normally Jibreel a.s. would come with Allah's commands. This time it appeared to be coming as a very unusual dream, which made the test even more difficult. Is Allah really asking him to sacrifice his son? Or is this Iblis trying to deceive him? Surprisingly, Ibrahim a.s. decides to go and share the dream with his son, the same son who has to be sacrificed. As evident in the verse, he even asks his son what is his opinion about the dream. And surprisingly, the boy gives him the assurity that he's looking for. The boy, who is not a prophet at this time, is incredibly certain that this is not a trick of Iblis. This is definitely a command from Allah that has to be fulfilled. Moreover, he reassures his father that he will be calm and steadfast. He won't cry, he won't panic. Now, how is this boy so calm? How is he not panicking, crying, in shock? How is he not trying to discourage his father from doing something like this? The reaction of the boy is actually very similar to the reaction of Ibrahim's wife when she was being left alone in Makkah with her newborn baby. If you remember, we discussed this in the previous episode, that as soon as Hajra learned that this was a command from Allah, she was instantly calm and certain that Allah's help would come. Her reaction made the test easier for Ibrahim a.s. Therefore, just as Allah put strength, faith and tawakkul in Hazrat Hajra so as to grant consolation to Ibrahim's heart, Allah did the same thing with Ismail. The courage, aqidah and tawakkul of this young boy is exactly what Ibrahim a.s. needed to see, and his determination that this is indeed a command from Allah is exactly what Ibrahim a.s. needed to hear in order to ease the test for him. If the boy started complaining or crying, or if he started arguing that this cannot possibly be from Allah, Ibrahim would have found this test very difficult to fulfill, especially given that this was his only child at that time. A child he had prayed to Allah for, and years later, at old age, Allah gave him this righteous son. And now that same one son has to be sacrificed. So from this we can understand that when Allah sends a difficult test to his slave, he knows that being a human, his slave will need reassurance, motivation, consolation. So to help his slave, that is exactly what Allah sends. He knows best where the words of comfort should come from, how they should come, and when they need to be heard. So now, as Ibrahim a.s. is taking his son to the place of sacrifice, his son remains very steadfast and calm, exactly as he promised. Even as Ibrahim a.s. is laying him down and is about to sacrifice him, he is still very patient, very calm. So yet again, this reveals the incredible mercy of Allah. Allah never places a burden on any one of his slaves more than his slaves can bear. So just as Ibrahim a.s. was about to sacrifice his son, Allah's command came, congratulating him for succeeding in the test and earning the immense reward and pleasure of Allah. A goat was put in place of the child, and Ismail was standing right by his father, healthy and happy. But why such a difficult test? Why not just send Jibreel a.s. down with the command instead of sending it as a dream? For Ibrahim a.s. it was a test of his faith. He loved his son, given that Ismail was the only son that he had, a son who had been gifted to him at such an old age. Would his love for his son overshadow his love for Allah? And this is important because when we obsess over anything related to dunya, it can come between us and Allah. And that is when we start to develop the fear of losing. That is when we get emotionally attached. Ibrahim a.s. was separated from his son when he was told to leave him in Makkah, But he still loved him immensely. He still used to go to visit his son. It's not like the case of Yaqub alayhi salam, where Yaqub did not even know where his son was. He couldn't even go and meet him or speak to him. Ibrahim alayhi salam knew exactly where his son was, and he could go and visit him. Now, of course, Allah knew that even though Ibrahim alayhi salam was a prophet, he had an even greater role to play. He had yet to raise the foundations of the Kaaba. He had yet to reintroduce the Hajj. He had yet to be blessed with another boy, Isaac, and then he had to become a leader, an ummat in himself for all his descendants. That is why even today, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity are called the Abrahamic faiths. They are not called the Mosaic faiths. The focus is not Musa alayhi salam. The focus is always Ibrahim alayhi salam. Even today, he is known as the father of Tawheed. This immense love and respect that people have for Ibrahim alayhi salam is exactly what it means when Allah mentions Ibrahim alayhi salam as being an ummat in himself. Allah knew that at that moment, Ibrahim has yet to become a leader for all of his descendants. But for that extreme honor, he must detach himself from the love of anything in dunya. For him to be bestowed with the honor of being an ummat in himself, a leader for all of his descendants till the end of times, to raise the foundations of the Kaaba, to reintroduce the Hajj, he needs to detach himself from the love of anything in dunya. So naturally, the test had to come from his son. Through that test, he had to learn that everything belongs to Allah, including his son. Valuing them and loving them is important, but not if it prevents a person from performing his role as a Khalifa. This is a lesson for all parents. Love your children, but do not obsess over them. Do not let your love for them make you forget your duty as a Muslim. But then again, we could ask, what about Ismail? Why such a hard test for him? Ismail alayhi salam at that time had yet to become a prophet. He would have to bear the responsibility of protecting the Kaaba from idol worship, making sure that all those who travel to perform Hajj do not innovate by introducing practices and rituals of their own. He will have to keep Makkah clean of any form of bid'at and any form of shirk, because he's going to be the maintainer of Allah's house after Ibrahim alayhi salam. And don't forget that many Arabs who were used to idol worship had started to convert to Islam at that time. I mentioned previously that there were some Arabs from Yemen who were moving towards Makkah, and there were Arabs also from Egypt who had started to embrace Islam, and they would come to perform Hajj. And at that time, people lived in tribes. So being the chief of a tribe, tribal status, these things mattered a lot. So with so many Arabs converting to Islam and coming to the place of Makkah for Hajj, many of them, because they belonged to powerful tribes, when they came to Makkah, they would want to exert influence and power to make alterations. They would want to make slight changes to the deen, slight changes to the rituals at Hajj. In fact, this is exactly how idol worship and bid'at started in Christianity, Judaism, and later on in Makkah. It's always because there are some powerful people who want to influence and change the religion. So to remain steadfast against this pressure, Ismail will have to be headstrong, firm in faith, fearless of society, and he must remove all doubt. He must learn to listen only to his heart and fear no one but Allah. This is precisely what this test inculcated in him. He had to be steadfast in front of his father, even though it meant facing death. He had to be mature and wise, remove all fears, and have absolute yaqeen that this dream is from God. He could not entertain doubts or the waswasas of shaitan telling him that this was a bad idea. Naturally, if the command to sacrifice Ismail had come through Jibreel, there would be no doubt. But Allah made the command come as a dream so that Ismail could learn how to challenge doubt, remain firm, fight the waswasas of Iblis, and this is precisely what he needed to be successful in the role that Allah had destined him for. So when Allah places a huge burden on us, don't panic, don't doubt yourself. Learn to remove all the doubt and fear and listen to the voice of your heart. Do what your instincts tell you is right, and then learn to trust Allah no matter what. And yet again, this proves that in all the tests that Allah has sent, there is always wisdom behind it. They are not randomly selected. But it's our job to find that wisdom and then to learn something from it and implement it in our own lives. Assalamu alaikum.